Unions are an incredibly effective tool for their workers, and I'm very careful about my wording there. They are a tool, much like a hammer. A hammer can be used to hang up a family photo. Theoretically, it could also be used to bludgeon a family to death. I think unions are incredibly effective. You don't have to go much further than a police union to understand how effective collective action can be. When unions are working well, or they're being a tool used for good, you can have better wages, you can have better job security, you can make work sites stronger, you can ensure the safety and protection of your workers. It's simple to understand how a group of people getting together wanting to make an industry better or safer or more accessible is incredibly effective. I'm not going to talk much about the distinction between communism or socialism or capitalism in this video. I have debated enough people on TikTok or my Discord for that. To get it out of the way quickly, I'm a capitalist. I don't find much moral failure in a business or a boss extracting the surplus value of a worker. I am also of the belief, though, that that worker should still be entitled to basic necessities like food, water, shelter, medicine, and I don't like the idea of workers being treated poorly. And I think unions are a really good tool to ensure that that doesn't happen. However, when it comes to government contracts, especially construction, union workers are sought after, or organizations which employ union workers are able to get some really, really lucrative contracts. But where there is money, there is power. And where there is power, there is corruption. And the question is, what do you then do when the people in charge of that union, who are meant to be fighting for the workers, instead start fighting for themselves and taking advantage of those positions?
A CFMEU leader says the Prime Minister has opened the gates of hell.
They don't own you. You're not slaves. So you've got the right to withdraw your labour whenever you like.
Clearly, these people do have their tentacles, and they're all good people, and there's good people in the CFMEU, and everyone else, every other union in the union movement will stand up against it.
Reports the union has been infiltrated by organised crime has prompted the shock resignation of its controversial leader John Setka months earlier than planned.
False allegations, the majority of them. And look, if me stepping down is going to protect the union and its members, because that's my job. My job is to protect the union.
John Setka has no legitimate place in the Labor movement.
Absolutely no alternative, because the CFMEU have made a decision that they're unable or completely unwilling to reform their leadership in the face of what are very serious charges.
They have their fangs into the CFMEU. Let's be honest about it.
So The Age came out with an article alleging that the CFMEU had been infiltrated by these underbelly figures, and they now allegedly had ties to criminals and criminal organizations. Now hold that piece, we're going to talk about that more in depth shortly, but I need to tell you firstly about the CFMEU broadly, members within the CFMEU, and some relevant legislation. But hold that piece. So the CFMEU stands for the Construction, Forestry and Maritime Employee Union. As of December 2022, they had roughly 140,000 members, and it's split into 4 different divisions. The main division we care about and the allegations are put against is the construction division, and that's going to be our primary focus for this video. In that construction division, you've got a fair few names. Some you might have heard of, others you've probably never heard of in the entirety of your life. You've got Zach Smith, Jade Ingham, Michael Ravbar, Darren Greenfield, John Setka, and then Mick Buchan, or Buchan, however you say it. All of these members have different responsibilities, or they're different representatives at a national or state level. But these are all the people affiliated with the construction and general division. That's the division where allegedly the underbelly has infiltrated. Now, there is a complicated relationship between the CFMEU generally and the Labour government, as well as one particular member, John Setka. Albanese wanted to expel Setka from the party over a statement he made about Rosie Batty. He made a comment allegedly around the idea that because of her, men were losing their rights. And given Setka also has a colorful history of statements and actions made towards women within the industry and towards his ex-wife, the party thought that this was an incredibly harmful and bad look, especially when they were rallying so hard against domestic violence. He was the secretary of the Tasmanian Victorian Division for 12 years. That is someone who has been within that union for an exceptionally long period of time. He also resigned a day before the allegations came forward. Now, he's making the claim it has to do with the aggressive media pressure that was being put on the union as a whole and towards himself, but I think it's an interesting thing to note in the timeline. Another important name to know is Zach Smith. That is the National Divisional Secretary of the Construction and General Division. He wants an internal investigation. He does not believe that external independent entities need to come in to assess viability or safety or legality of the union. Hold that piece. That's going to tie way more into the allegations. Now I have to tell you about the Australian Council of Trade Unions, the ACTU, which is the peak body for Australian unions more broadly. It has 38 affiliated unions and it represents 1.8 million workers and their families. And the CFMEU and the ACTU are intrinsically connected or engaging with one another. It doesn't mean they're always having an open dialogue, as Sally McManus, the leader of the ACTU, has put forward a statement that she was not aware at all of what was occurring within the CFMEU, but that's another player in this game. And then finally, there is Tony Burke, the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations of Australia. He is the delegate from the Labor Party. He is the minister who is responsible for resolving this problem. It's his portfolio. Those are the 4 names I need you to remember. Now, let's specifically get into the allegations and what's happened since then.
Stealing, theft. I like pilfering. I'm a sneaky poacher. I like taking things that do not belong to me.
So what are the alleged crimes? Well, there's a fair few of them. The first one is bribes. The second one is that hundreds of thousands of dollars of free building work is being given out by major builders to the bosses. Another is that factional opponents are being threatened by officials or other bosses. There is one incident reported where Setka, remember him, delivered a suitcase with a threatening message to one of his opponents who wants to move the manufacturing division out of the Setka-controlled construction division. There was also footage released of a top union official boasting about the CFMEU secretly controlling the big build programs in Victoria, and that could block particular companies from government sites. It was also reported there is an audio of a CFMEU fixer and a business consultant claiming that they can funnel large sums of cash and regular kickbacks to friends or allies of the CFMEU, and in return, the union would push for those particular groups to be on construction sites involved with the big builds in Victoria. And those, of course, are funded by the Victorian government. Allegedly, non-union workers were pushed out of job sites, and at times, subcontractors were brought in who didn't even have the necessary equipment for the job, and it had to be bought. On top of that, it was found, allegedly, some contractors were hired even though they were going to cost double what other contractors did. However, the ones hired had a particular affiliation or connection to the union. On top of that, allegedly, the New South Wales CFMEU boss, Darren Greenfield, was seen receiving $5,000 during a meeting with a developer who was seeking the union's approval. So some pretty big allegations, and there was a huge fallout over this. So Setka resigns, Zach Smith comes out and says, look, let's investigate this internally, and Sally McManus comes out with the ACTU and says there is zero chance that is happening, and the construction division of the CFMEU is indefinitely suspended until they can prove that there is no longer the criminal activity or engagement occurring within that division. Sally McManus came out and said that out of the 52 votes, only a handful of them voted against the ACTU, but they are now suspended, and the federal government and the state governments started to get involved as well, and it got pretty aggressive pretty quickly. So an independent administrator was appointed to be the head of the CFMEU and effectively clear it out and weed it out. Also had this big political movement around donations. The CFMEU is a big donator to the Labour Party. It's not a small amount of money. Now, in the past, the CFMEU has also donated to, I believe, the Victorian Socialists and the Greens, but there is an incredible connection and tie between Labour and the CFMEU. And eventually, Labour's national executive banned donations and cut ties to the CFMEU's construction division. And of course, members within the CFMEU were not happy about this. Queensland Premier Stephen Miles told his division of the CFMEU, "Don't fight the appointment of the independent administrator," to which Ravbar responded, lashing out at the PM and quoting that Albanese panicked and soiled himself over some unproven allegations in the media. So that went about as well as you can expect. Chris Minns, the Premier of New South Wales, suspended the CFMEU's affiliation with the State Labor Party and is also now trying to oust the State Secretary, Darren Greedfield, via the courts after images were revealed showing him allegedly receiving a $5,000 cash bribe. You can also imagine how well that went. Sally McManus had to fight comments and allegations that she should have known or did know that there was criminal activity allegedly occurring in the CFMEU, having to make statements that she was not aware. If she was aware, she would have said something, that moving forward the ACTU will fight against corruption, and that also, and I think a really fair point, it's not reasonable to assume she did know. It took the AFP and investigators months when they had all of the resources to uncover this. How was she going to know? Maybe there were rumors. She denies that she heard any of them, but it doesn't seem like she was aware of anything, at least with the information we currently have. And then Tony Burke has had to front the media, saying that the Albanese government recognizes this is serious and they will be doing something about it moving forward. But overall, everything was kind of on fire for the next couple of days. Peter Dutton, of course, took the opportunity to attack Anthony Albanese and the Labour Party, saying it was the weakest possible response to put forward that independent administrator. But another senior Liberal official put forward the idea that the construction division of the CFMEU should be deregistered. And that's actually a really interesting thing to talk about, because it lets us talk about the limitations to government interventions and union busting. And we're going to talk about that now.
The government's threatening to deregister the CFMEU after explosive allegations against the union.
Deregistering a union is a serious and impactful thing. It effectively means that the workers who are part of that union lose their rights. They lose their representation. They are not eligible or given the same type of awards that they may have gotten when they are a part of that union. It can really, really negatively affect people. Deregistering the construction arm of the CFMEU wouldn't just punish the people who did the wrong thing legally, it would punish all of the innocent workers as well. And we've already seen this play out once. In 2017, there was the Fair Work Registered Organisations Amendment Ensuring Integrity Bill from 2017. And this was meant to make it that it was easier to deregister or stop someone becoming an official if they had engaged in criminal or illegal activity. And one of the biggest concerns is it was effectively a union busting bill. They found that the right to strike could be hindered, that the definitions given in that amendment were so vague that a union could be deregistered or someone could be punished for engaging or promoting or organizing a strike. And there was a huge risk there. Members across the CFMEU were against it. The Labour Party and the Greens were against it. Even people like Pauline Hanson and Jackie Lambie were against it because they felt as though there weren't enough protection for workers when it came to things like putting paperwork in late, and also that they thought it was unfairly going against the trade unions or construction unions when there was a significant amount of white-collar crime happening in the banks or Westpac at the time. It was seen as nothing more than a union busting bill, and thankfully it was shot down in the Senate 34 to 34. Getting rid of a corrupt union or a union that has been infiltrated by people who don't care about the workers is incredibly difficult to deal with, because if you get rid of the union, sure, you eliminate that problem, but also all the innocent workers get caught in the crossfire. Deregistering the construction branch of the CFMEU, it's not a simple fix. It makes things worse, and it creates anger and sadness, and there is the risk of people losing their jobs and being economically harmed in the middle of a cost of living crisis already. It's a bad decision to make.
Socialism is when the government does stuff. And it's more socialism the more stuff it does.
I think to close this off, my final point would be, all in all, it's just disappointing. Unions are nothing more than a tool, and ideally you want them to be used for what they were designed to be used for, improving the rights and lives of workers. And when you have people come in who don't care about actually improving the lives of workers, they simply want to make a quick buck, it can be really devastating and really saddening. It does worry me that when it comes to future big build projects or other government-funded projects, union workers or union organizations won't be the first point of call. It's sad to think that this may poison not only the government's perception of unions, but also people's perceptions of unions. It's really difficult to get people to join their union. A lot of people have misinformation or don't trust the union, and moments like this, it makes sense to not trust unions. It's really scary to think that you're giving over a certain amount of money for people to represent you, and then at the end of the day, all they're doing is stealing or engaging in illegal activity or taking bribes or not having your best interests at heart. I think it's really, really, really disappointing. But I think no matter what, the solution can't be union busting or trying to deregister unions when we believe they're doing the wrong thing, or potentially leaving workers to fall through the cracks because the people at the top have done the wrong thing. I hope this gets resolved. I hope the independent administrator is able to do an effective job. I hope they're able to weed out the people who are doing the wrong thing within the unions. Thank you for all the feedback on the last video. Come join the Discord, come talk about it, come say hi, come let me know what you think in the comments. I hope you're enjoying. Let me know if there's anything you think I could be doing better. Have a good one.